Have you ever wondered how you go from this to this? After today's video, you won't have to. Let's get to it. Hello everybody! Welcome to another video. Thanks for tuning in. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you guys like and subscribe videos that you guys actually enjoy watching, as I use it as a measure to understand what type of videos you guys want to see from me. But today's video is going to be a little interesting. It's going to be something that you guys ask about a lot. And hopefully this clears up the air about how you can take something from a normal sketch to a finished digital drawing. And I'm going to give you guys different options, and it's very generalized when it comes down to what software and everything that you can use. So you can approach it in any way you want. It's just going to be a generalized approach to it. So I have a pre-recorded video of a drawing of a little dinosaur that I was going to use to make my little nephew's banners for his soccer team. His team is called the Raptors. So it's going to be a really fun velociraptor that I actually designed in my sketchbook, and then I wanted to take and do a digital banner with. So we're going to play the video right now. We're going to pause it as we go, and I'm going to explain things as we go along. All right, so as you can see, I start with a really small sketch. And from this point on, I enlarge it in the program. So you can import it by taking a picture or scanning it. Either way works. At this point, I'm going to pause this for a second, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing at this point. Once you have the file, a certain size that you need it. But right now, I'm going to draw over the actual sketch that I did, trying to get a more dynamic pose. They're a soccer team, and as you can see, I drew a bunch of little raptors around it. I was really happy with the one on the right, the one that I'm drawing over. So I'm going to change the positioning of it and make it a little bit more dynamic using the basic design that I did in the back as a template. So let's press play again. As you can see, right now I wanted the soccer ball to be really big in the front. And at this point I'm working with the legs, just roughing in really loosely with keeping the same proportions. And thankfully I have the sketch in the back. So I'm just roughing it in super loose, just keeping it really loose at this point. And the reason that I'm doing this, I do it on a separate layer so that I can move around the other one. I can make it so it's a little bit more opaque so you can see through the design, so it's easier to draw over. As you can see right there as well, I'm using the template to not have to think too much about the actual look of the character. At this point, I'm just repositioning things to make them look a different direction and, making them look the way that I believe a soccer character should look like. You can do the same thing with things for logos, characters for t-shirts, any of that sort of stuff. All right, let's continue looking. I'm just roughing out the details very loosely. You can see very sketchy. Not concerning myself with super clean lines, but I'm getting a general design that I want. I flip it to make sure that it actually looks good both ways. I saw that the tail was a little bit off, and I like doing that all the time. Next thing was the actual letters. I already drew a rough idea of what I wanted the letters to be. So at this point, I just enlarged our part, cut it out, and I used the warp tools that I provided in the program to be able to get it to look nice and the way that I want it, like the scale and everything else. So as you can see, we have our basic design down, but let's talk a little bit about what design program we actually want to use when it comes down to actually having the design. We're gonna pause it for a second. Before we get too far into it, let's pause this for a second. First, you gotta decide what type of design program you wanna use. There's a bunch of design programs out there that you can choose from. It can be anywhere from the most popular ones like Photoshop or Sketchbook Pro, Adobe Illustrator, and there's other ones that are very popular nowadays that actually can help you out a lot. Be it Paint Studio Side, that seems to be free, Procreate, which costs like $10 if you have an iPad Pro. Sketchbook Pro is actually very, very affordable. And the one that I personally like to use is Clip Studio Pro. Why do I like Clip Studio Pro? Clip Studio Pro has a very, very nifty tool called the Vector Paint Tool, or Vector Pen Tool, Vector Layers, and it allows you to just delete intersections. And I believe that PaintSci has that as well, but not completely sure because I don't really use that program. But you got to make sure that you choose the design program that you like, get familiar with them, and once you learn one of them, trust me, learning the others is very, very easy. It's just a matter of learning where the tools are that you get used to. I learned in Photoshop because it's the most basic standard tool that you use whenever you work anywhere. And it's good to just learn the basic tool that everybody knows, just in case you end up working with somebody or a company that allows you to work with that program. So at this point, I'm just adjusting the actual design. I'm scaling the letters, moving around, warping them, making sure that everything's going to look fine. This is going to be the general layout for the banner. And it was supposed to be nice and wide, little thin, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to start drawing the actual letters over the actual template that I made myself. That way I have cleaner lines and everything. In this case, they didn't have to be perfectly clean lines for the letters. So I just went in with a pen tool and just made sure that it looked a little scratchy because it's supposed to be a very rugged, very animalistic thing. Make sure to check your layers. Make sure that you take off the layer underneath to make sure that everything is going well. And at this point, we're gonna go into inking the actual character. But let's pause again for a second and let's talk about a little bit other things that might be needed. So, inking in computer programs. It's all going to depend on your pen settings and how you want to approach inking. You can do everything. You don't really need super fancy equipment to be able to do so. There is a base that you can go with, and then let me show you guys some examples of what things you can actually purchase to be able to do it properly. Depending on the program you have, you can even go with a mouse. You can ink with a normal just mouse. First of all, Wacom tablets are very, very good. Probably top notch in the industry. If you have a Wacom tablet, it means normally that you're pretty serious about actually getting into digital artwork. Or you have it as a living, it's a career. Normally people buy Wacom tablets, especially pressure sensitive tablets, screens like Cintiq monitors, if you're going to be doing things digitally a lot. Why do I say that? It saves a lot of time and it makes it intuitive to be able to draw on the screen. But you don't have to buy one that's a couple $1,000s, expensive. You don't have to buy a 30-inch one. Even the most basic ones, the little tiny 13-inch ones, are more than capable of doing everything that you can possibly want. In some cases, it's actually more convenient, especially if you have a laptop, because you can just take it anywhere you want. I do prefer anything I have a huge one. I have an absolutely huge one. Like, mine is about 30 inches in width. Too big. I wish that I could say that that's the perfect size. It's too big for me. I never see myself using the whole entire screen, and it's just very bulky on my desk. Wacom also produces little tablets that you draw, like these right here. You've probably seen them. It's probably the most common thing that most people use. You just have to get used to the hand-eye coordination that it takes. It doesn't take long to get used to it. It doesn't. It's actually very, very easy if you play with it for a little bit. They're very good to do artwork with, and I worked with one of those for years because I didn't have the budget to be able to buy something as expensive as a Cintiq. Tablets like that are perfectly well. And recently, there's a different company that's actually giving Wacom a run for their money. This company is Huion. They have excellent tablets. Excellent. excellent tablets. They've sent me, they have actually sent me some to review. I have one review for one of the smaller tablets, their most economical one. Perfect tablet. It works perfectly. I think it's like 40 bucks. So it's incredibly cheap and it'll last you forever. The quality is top notch. I can only imagine that their actual big screens, the ones that resemble Cintiq monitors, are gonna be just as good as those. So I would suggest purchasing one of those over a Wacom tablet at first. And if you're going to move up to a Cintiq monitor, do it when you're nice and capable and you actually learn the basics of everything first. Because it's a very big investment to not be using it every single day. And the other things that we can do. Apple iPad Pros and iPad Pencil combined with a program like Procreate, which is exclusive to the iPad, is an amazing tool to start doing things digitally. You honestly cannot go wrong with that. I used to have a very expensive portable Wacom mobile one. It was like a laptop. I sold it immediately the moment that I actually got to touch an iPad with an Apple Pencil because it replaces everything. It's an entire laptop in one. I have a Gen 1 that doesn't have the capabilities of a newer generation one, and it's still amazing to this day. It's more than a few years old, still handles amazing, and I've yet to even fill it up, and I work with it constantly. It's paid for itself multiple times over, and it's a fantastic investment if you actually want to pursue doing digital stuff. Talking about that, every program has its own methods. You just have to get used to one. Learn to get used to one. In this case, I'm using Clip Studio, and you'll see why. It provides me super clean lines with the pen tools, and I really just like the feel of it on the actual Cintiq. If I was using anything else, I'd probably be inking in Procreate because I just absolutely love the feel of the pencil to the screen on that one, much more than the Cintiqs. So let's get back to the actual inking because I think we took too much time off. So when you ink digitally, you want to make sure that you have confident strokes. This is sped up a little bit, but as you can see, I normally just do one clean line for everything. I'm very used to this software, so it makes it really easy for me to understand the limits of my skill or of my pen. So I know how much pressure I have to apply because I draw in this almost every single day. At first, it's going to take a while to get used to it. If you go really slow, you tend to get jittery lines. So tend to overshoot your lines and then erase the extra, like I did right there on the chin. Overshoot and erase the additional parts. That's what I like about Clip Studio. It allows me to do that. It allows me to overshoot and then just erase the juncture that's actually done with the vector pen tool. You guys should try it out if you guys actually have it. If the program is literally only like 50 bucks forever, you'll never have to update it. You'll never need to buy anything else from it. And if you get it on Black Friday or any sale, it's like 15 bucks. Definitely worth it. But when you're inking digitally, you can go from something as simple as the sketch that I have underneath and just start laying down clean lines. Using thick to thin line work is key when it comes down to digital inking. This is how you're going to determine depth into just line work, especially in something like this that has to be, I'm not going to over detail it with a lot of lights and shadows and highlights and core shadows and everything of the sort. It has to be printed and it has to be very colorful. So I'm going to have to play with the line work in order to be able to get the feel of depth that I want. As you can see, I just overshoot the lines and just delete the excess. You can do this in every program. It's convenient to have the vector pen tool in Clip Studio, but it's not something that you can't just do by just erasing the lines. At this point, I'm just reworking the foot. I didn't like the way that it looked. And, hands and stuff like that, trying to make sure that they go into perspective. Overlapping shapes allows you to do that really, really easy. Just adding little details, which is really simple going digitally. and just adding very, very small details like the thumb, making it a little bit more humanized, more like Tony the Tiger-ish type of cartoon where you humanize a little bit of the animal section of it. I wanted the head a little bit smaller, so I just went in, grabbed with the lasso tool the head, and reduced it in size. And at this point, I'm just adding little tiny lines, fixing the line work, and making sure that little tiny shadows are there. I added motion lines to the soccer ball and added a shadow underneath, which is gonna end up just being little scribbles and little circles. Aha, okay, so what I did was I took an image that I took on my cell phone. As you can see, it was really, really tiny. But I took an image of an actual t-shirt or one of the jerseys that they have for their team, and I just applied that color to the background. This does a couple things. I don't like coloring when it comes down to having just white backgrounds because I don't know where to lay the white. And I tend to leave little tiny streaks. So I tend to just color the background first. Now, you can see that I'm not laying down super perfectly clean like colors. I'm not using the bucket fill tool. I'm not using like a fill layer or anything. I just like to color as if I was coloring with colored pencils, and then I just erase everything else. That is something that I like to do, not necessarily because it's more efficient. It's just actually kind of therapeutic to me. I just like doing it. I like making sure that the color is all the way saturated, all the way to the edges. This way you never get any of those little tiny artifacts or little tiny white specks that you tend to get whenever you use the fill tools. There is ways to get around that, but I actually enjoy the process of going in and coloring everything. It's kind of like a coloring book to me, and I really do enjoy it. With colors, hold on, I'm gonna pause this again. Once you get used to digital programs, you'll understand that every single every single digital program like Photoshop, Procreate, Clip Studio, they work on something called layers. Layers essentially mean, I'm just gonna do it representatively with paper. If you have one layer, you have a piece of paper like this. If you make another layer, it'll put the piece of paper on top, right? So anything that you draw over this part will cover anything that's underneath. And you can do that multiple times over. So anything that's underneath the other layer is going to be covered by something from the layer above it. This is a very helpful tool when you're coloring, because that means that you only really have to color the spaces that aren't being covered by the one above it. That allows you to play around a lot, and also if you set a color to each layer, it's very easy to change any color that you have for each part of your character. Normally with cartoons, colors don't go insane, they're not crazy, so you normally tend to have less than 5 colors when it comes down to those. So you can go ahead and do a lot of cool modifications and shadows and details to just specific parts of your drawing, which is very helpful down the line. So you should keep it as a little hint, and you should do that every single time that you guys do any design work. Let's continue. So what I'm doing here is essentially what I did that. I set the orange, which is the main color, all the way at the top as a layer. And then I start coloring the little flesh tone that I have there in a layer underneath. That way, any single thing that goes over the line, I can't color over the orange. And it allows me to lay the color very quickly, very efficiently, and very fast. And therefore, allowing me to actually have most of the design done really quickly. I made a new layer. I made it in the background and just gave a little bit of white that's very softened in order to make the character pop out from the background and make sure that the t-shirt could remain the same color as the banner background. At this point, I'm just literally adding little tiny details. I fill in the soccer ball. So what I did there is I bring in an actual soccer ball image that I just copy and paste from Google, warp it to make it fit. I didn't even trace it. I just blurred it, and it provided the desired effect that I wanted. I didn't even have to draw it at this point. I just blurred it out. Since it has to be with motion, anything with motion in front of something really sharp, it's gonna provide that image of blurriness, that distinction of motion. And it's very easy to just play around with that. Trying different colors out. And as you can see, I have that in a separate layer, so it's very easy for me to go in the details. I do a very similar effect that I did with the actual character, and I provided just a simple color in the background to make it stand out. Playing around with the different opacities, and opacities means transparency of the actual things, allows you to create some really fun things too. Oh, I decided to actually use a clip image that I had from a jungle, and I got it from a royalty-free stock. I have a membership to something like that because it's very helpful to be able to do this. And I just played around with different looks, different opacities, and I think it fit really, really nicely. So something like this took me about an hour and a half to do. And from going from the sketch to a finished piece of artwork, it took me only about an hour and a half. This is because I'm actually relatively quick when it comes down to designing. I know the process of everything, so I don't have to guess too much. Oh, and I'm adding just little details to the skin as well, by adding a slightly darker orange and just playing around with colors. But regardless, at this point, it's just little details that you can add, to your drawing to finish it up. Something like this is a very commercially viable pieces of artwork. And it's going to be necessary for you to understand this if you want to become a graphic designer or an illustrator. It's digital artwork is the most viable way to make a living when it comes down to being an artist. So this video is coming to an end. And well, as you can see, we have a finished piece of artwork that took us about an hour and a half. This is something that could be viably sold to a client or actually be reproduced as t-shirts, hats, banners, posters, sold as prints, or do anything you want with it. If you learn this process, it's going to be very easy to be able to go from just your normal sketches to really clean line work very quickly if you put enough practice and time on it. Well, there you have it, guys and girls. A finished illustration from sketch to finished piece in about an hour or so. Well, sped up, but you get to see the process that I do it like every single time. Very rarely do I deviate from this method, and it's helped me be very efficient and actually be able to make a living as an artist ever since I learned how to do this properly. We can talk a lot about more detail and stuff like that in the comments. Leave any questions you might have. I'll make sure to answer them as quickly as I can. But thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys learned something new, and I'll see you guys in the next video. This was Rod. Thank you all for coming. Later.